The distress signal captain. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of the observation deck, watching the stars shimmer beyond the reinforced viewport of the UES Resilience. The Frontier patrol ship cut through space at the edge of human territory, where few dared to venture. Elena had spent 15 years exploring the galaxy's dangerous sectors, places where gravity storms could crush ships and radiation could cook a crew alive. As a child growing up in the underground cities of Mars, she had learned that survival meant facing the impossible with steady hands and an unbreaking will. The bridge communicator crackled to life, interrupting her thoughts. "Captain, we're picking up something strange," came the voice of Lieutenant Marcus Chen, the ship's communications officer. His family had survived the great floods of old Earth, and like many humans, he possessed the stubborn determination that came from generations of fighting against deadly environments. Elena made her way back to the bridge, where her crew worked. At their stations, with the efficient focus that marked all humans who served in deep space. Unlike other species in the galaxy who often panicked under pressure, humans thrived in dangerous situations. They had evolved on a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. "What do we have, Chen?" Elena asked, settling into her command chair. Chen's fingers danced across his console, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's a distress signal, Captain, but it's not from any human ship. The language patterns are completely alien, and the transmission is weak. It's been bouncing around the relay networks for days." Elena leaned forward. In the 5 years since humanity had joined the galactic community, they had learned that most alien species avoided the dangerous regions of space where humans operated. "Can you clean it up?" "Working on it now," Chen replied. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines and the soft beeping of various systems. Elena watched her crew work, noting how each of them moved with the careful precision that came from living on a world where mistakes could be fatal. Dr. Sarah Kim, the ship's linguist and xenobiologist, looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm getting fragments of the translation. It appears to be from a species called the Cathara. They're describing some kind of attack." Elena had heard of the Cathara during the briefings at Earth Command. They were a peaceful species known throughout the galaxy for their art and philosophy. Their homeworld was a garden paradise with gentle weather and low gravity, the complete opposite of Earth's harsh environment. "Put it on the main screen," Elena ordered. The display flickered to life, showing a being with pale blue skin and large, gentle eyes. The alien's features were delicate, almost fragile-looking to human eyes. Elena could see fear in those eyes, a terror that seemed out of place on such a peaceful face. "This is Scholar Theron of the Cathara Collective," came the translated voice, soft and melodic. "We send this message to any who can hear us. Our world is under attack by the Zephyrian Empire. They came without warning, demanding our surrender and the resources of our system. We have no military, no weapons of war. We are a people of peace and learning." The image shook as explosions could be heard in the background. "They have given us one cycle to surrender or face complete destruction. Our attempts to contact the Galactic Council have failed. We believe they are blocking our communications. If anyone receives this message, please know that the Cathara tried to live in harmony with all species. We ask only that our knowledge and art not be forgotten when we are gone." The message ended, leaving the bridge in heavy silence. Elena stared at the blank screen, feeling a familiar anger building in her chest. It was the same feeling she had experienced as a child when she watched stronger kids picking on weaker ones in the underground tunnels of Mars. "Chen, when was this recorded?" she asked quietly. "Based on the signal degradation and relay patterns, I'd estimate about 6 days ago, Captain." Elena stood and walked to the tactical display, studying the star charts. The Cathara system was 3 days away at maximum speed, well outside human territory. She knew that most other species would consider this none of their business. The galaxy was a vast place and suffering was common. But Elena was human, and humans had a peculiar habit of making other people's problems their own, especially when those people couldn't defend themselves. "Dr. Kim, what do we know about the Zephyrian Empire?" Elena asked. The doctor pulled up files on her console. They're a militaristic species from a low-gravity world. They've been expanding their territory for the past 50 years, targeting peaceful civilizations and demanding tribute. They're technologically advanced and have never faced serious resistance. Elena nodded grimly. And the Kithara? Pacifists by nature and philosophy. Their entire society is built around art, music, and scholarly pursuit. They've never developed military technology. From a physical standpoint, they're much more fragile than humans. Their world has 0.7 Earth gravity and a very stable climate. Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez, Elena's second-in-command, spoke up from his position at the tactical station. Captain, with respect, this isn't our fight. The Kithara system is outside our jurisdiction, and we're just one ship. Elena turned to look at Rodriguez. He was a good officer, born in the high-altitude cities of the Andes, where the air was thin and life was hard. Like all humans, he understood the value of caution, but Elena also knew that humans had another trait that set them apart from most galactic species. They refused to walk away when innocent people needed help. You're right, Rodriguez. It's not our fight, Elena said. But sometimes the right thing to do isn't the smart thing to do. She activated the ship's intercom. All hands, this is the captain. Set course for Earth Command, maximum speed. We need to deliver this message to people who can make a difference. The journey back to Earth took 2 days, during which Elena barely slept. She kept thinking about the fear in Scholar Theron's eyes and the resignation in the alien's voice. The Kithara had accepted their fate because they believed no one would help them. In their experience, that was probably true. Most galactic species minded their own business and avoided unnecessary risks. Humans were different. When the Resilience reached Earth, Elena transmitted the Kithara distress signal directly to Fleet Admiral Morrison at Earth Command. Within hours, she found herself standing in the Admiral's office, looking out at the blue and white marble that was humanity's homeworld. Captain Vasquez, Admiral Morrison said, reviewing the message on his personal display. This is a tragic situation, but I'm not sure what you expect us to do about it. Elena had served under Morrison during the Titan crisis, when a reactor failure had threatened to destroy humanity's largest mining station. She knew he was a good man, but he was also practical. Sir, the Kithara are asking for help. They're a peaceful people facing extinction. Morrison set down his tablet and looked at Elena with tired eyes. Captain, we have exactly 47 ships in our entire fleet. The Galactic Council has advised us to stay out of local conflicts. We're the new species in the neighborhood, and we don't want to make enemies. What about allies? Elena asked. The Kithara could become valuable partners if we help them. And if we fail, we could be wiped out ourselves, Morrison replied. The Zephyrian Empire has over 200 ships, advanced technology, and 50 years of military experience. We've been in space for less than a century. Elena straightened her shoulders. Sir, permission to speak freely? Morrison nodded. I didn't grow up in the safe zones of Earth, Admiral. I grew up in the tunnels under New Shanghai, where the air recyclers failed twice a month and the water was rationed. My parents taught me that when someone is in trouble and you have the power to help, you help. That's what makes us human. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, staring out at Earth. Finally, he spoke. The Galactic Council will condemn any intervention. They prefer stability over justice. Then maybe it's time someone showed them there's a difference, Elena said. Morrison turned back to face her. Captain, if we do this, we'll be committing most of our fleet to a battle we probably can't win, in defense of people we barely know against an enemy that has never been defeated. Elena smiled. Sir, that sounds like exactly the kind of thing humans would do. Morrison studied her face for a moment, then activated his communications console. Get me the Secretary General and the Defense Council. Emergency session in 1 hour. 3 hours later, Elena stood before the entire Earth Defense Council, representing politicians and military leaders from every nation on Earth. The chamber was filled with the quiet tension that came before momentous decisions. Secretary General Chen addressed the room. We've all reviewed the Cathara distress signal and the intelligence on the Zephyrian Empire. Captain Vasquez has requested that we intervene on behalf of the Cathara people. It's a suicide mission, declared General Petrov from the Russian Federation. We'd be risking everything for strangers. We'd be saving innocent lives, countered Admiral Okafor from the African Union. That's supposed to mean something. Elena listened to the debate, hearing the same arguments she had expected. Some council members spoke of practical concerns about Earth's security. Others talked about the moral obligation to help those who couldn't help themselves. Finally, Secretary General Chen called for quiet. Captain Vasquez, you've studied this situation more than anyone. What's your honest assessment? Elena stood, looking around the room at faces representing 6 billion humans. The odds are terrible. The Zephyrians have better technology, more ships, and decades of experience. If we fight them, some of us probably won't come home. The room was silent. But, Elena continued, the Cathara are going to die if no one helps them. They're artists and scholars and teachers, and they're going to be wiped out because they chose peace over war. If we walk away from this, we're telling the galaxy that strength is the only thing that matters. She paused, thinking of her childhood in the underground cities. My grandmother used to tell me that the measure of a person isn't how strong they are, or how many fights they win. It's whether they stand up for others when it matters most. Secretary General Chen nodded slowly. The vote is called. All in favor of mobilizing the fleet to assist the Cathara? Elena watched as hands rose around the room. It wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. Motion carried, Chen announced. Admiral Morrison, you have authorization to deploy the fleet. Within 6 hours, every available Earthship was converging on the Sol system. Elena watched from the bridge of the Resilience as the fleet assembled. There were only 38 ships in total, a mixture of patrol vessels, research ships hastily fitted with weapons, and a handful of proper warships. It wasn't much compared to the Zephyrian Empire's vast armada, but it was everything humanity could spare. Captain Rodriguez joined Elena at the observation port. Still think this is the right thing to do, Captain? Elena watched as the Earthship, UES Determination, captained by Maria Santos from the storm-battered coasts of Portugal, took its position in the formation. Next to it, the UES Perseverance, commanded by Yuki Tanaka from the earthquake zones of Japan, prepared for departure. Every ship in the fleet was crewed by humans who had grown up in Earth's harshest environments. They were miners from the deep ocean floors, farmers from the radiation-soaked plains of Australia, engineers from the frozen cities of Antarctica. They were people who had learned that when the universe tried to kill you, you fought back. Rodriguez, Elena said quietly. 6 months ago, the galaxy thought humans were just another weak species from a backwater world. They called us Deathworlders, like it was an insult. She turned to face her second-in-command. Maybe it's time we showed them what Deathworlders can really do. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, 38 human ships racing toward a battle they probably couldn't win, to save people they had never met, because it was the right thing to do. As Elena watched the stars stretch into lines outside the viewport, she thought about Scholar Theron's message. The Cathara had asked only that their knowledge and art not be forgotten. If the humans had anything to say about it, there would be no need to remember the Cathara as a lost civilization. They would survive, and they would know that sometimes, when the universe seemed dark and hopeless, Deathworlders answered the call. The impossible battle. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Cathara system, and Captain Elena Vasquez felt her heart sink as the tactical displays updated. The beautiful blue-green world that had once been home to billions of peaceful beings was surrounded by a massive Zephyrian armada. 350 warships formed a perfect blockade around the planet, their dark hulls gleaming with the deadly efficiency of a military machine that had never known defeat. Captain, Lieutenant Chen's voice was steady despite the impossible odds before them. I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the Zephyrian fleet. Their ships are easily twice the size of our largest vessels. Elena studied the tactical display on the bridge of the Resilience. The human fleet looked pathetically small compared to the enemy force, like children's toys scattered around a giant's fortress. But she had learned long ago that size wasn't everything. Growing up in the underground cities of Mars had taught her that sometimes the smallest fighter could win through pure determination and clever thinking. "Any word from the Cathara?" Elena asked. Dr. Kim looked up from her communications console. "I'm picking up faint signals from underground shelters on the planet's surface. The Cathara managed to evacuate most of their population to deep bunkers before the bombardment began. Scholar Thyron is among the survivors." Elena nodded grimly. At least they weren't too late to save lives. "What's the status of the Zephyrian fleet?" Commander Rodriguez pulled up detailed scans on his tactical station. "They're not moving, Captain. It looks like they're waiting for something. The bombardment stopped when we arrived." The answer came quickly. A communication request appeared on the main screen, and Elena accepted it. The face that appeared was unlike anything the humans had seen before. The Zephyrian commander had scaled skin that shifted from dark green to black, narrow yellow eyes that seemed to evaluate everything as potential prey, and a mouth filled with sharp teeth designed for tearing flesh. "I am Supreme War Leader Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire," the alien hissed, his voice carrying the cold authority of someone who had never been challenged. "You are the humans we have heard whispers about, the so-called Deathworlders." Elena stood tall, meeting the alien's gaze. Without flinching, "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Fleet. We demand that you cease your attack on the Cathara and withdraw from this system immediately." Vextar's mouth opened in what might have been laughter, showing rows of predatory teeth. "Demand? You bring 38 small ships against our armada and make demands?" He leaned closer to the screen. "Your reputation precedes you, humans. We have heard that you come from a world of death and violence. But courage without wisdom is merely foolishness." Elena kept her expression neutral, though her mind was racing. The Zephyrian commander was confident, perhaps overconfident. That could be used against him. "The Cathara are a peaceful people. They pose no threat to your empire, which is precisely why they will serve us well," Vextar replied coldly. "Their world is rich in rare minerals, and their location provides a strategic advantage for our expansion. They have chosen to resist our generous offer of servitude, so now they will face extinction." Elena's jaw tightened. "Not while we're here." Vextar studied her with those predatory eyes. "Very well, Deathworlder. You wish to die protecting strangers? We shall accommodate you. Your ships will make interesting additions to our trophy collection." The communication ended, and Elena turned to her crew. "All ships, battle stations, prepare for engagement." As alarms sounded throughout the fleet, Elena opened a channel to all human vessels. "This is Captain Vasquez to all ships. I know the odds look impossible. The enemy has 10 times our numbers and superior firepower. But remember who we are. We're the species that survived ice ages and asteroid impacts. We're the people who turned a deadly world into home." She paused, looking out at the stars where Earth lay light years away. "The Zephyrians think numbers and technology will win this battle. They don't understand that humans fight differently. We fight for each other, and we never surrender when innocent lives are at stake." The human fleet began moving toward the Zephyrian armada with a coordination that surprised their enemies. Unlike most species who preferred cautious, long-range engagements, the humans accelerated directly toward the center of the enemy formation. "They're insane," muttered Vextar's tactical officer aboard the Zephyrian command ship. "No sane species charges directly into a superior force." Vextar's eyes narrowed as he watched the approaching humans. "Perhaps that is why they are called Deathworlders. Open fire when they reach optimal range." But the humans never reached what the Zephyrians considered optimal range. Instead, they did something that no military commander in the galaxy had ever attempted. Captain Santos, commanding the UES Determination, led half the fleet directly into the heart of a nearby asteroid field that the Zephyrians had been carefully avoiding. The asteroids were massive chunks of rock and metal, some larger than buildings, spinning and colliding in a chaotic dance that would crush any ship that entered. The Zephyrians watched in disbelief, as the human vessels disappeared into what they considered a death trap. "Fools," Vextar hissed. "They've killed themselves, for us." But humans had been mining asteroids for decades. Captain Santos and her crew had grown up working in the asteroid belts around Mars, where a single mistake could mean death. As the determination weaved between massive rocks that would have pulverized a Zephyrian ship, Santos smiled grimly. "Chen, start tagging the big ones with mining charges," she ordered. "Rodriguez, plot a course that brings us out behind their main formation." The humans worked with the efficient precision of people who had turned one of the galaxy's most dangerous professions into routine work. They attached explosive charges to asteroids, calculated trajectories, and prepared to turn space debris into weapons. Meanwhile, the other half of the human fleet, led by Elena aboard the Resilience, engaged the Zephyrian forward scouts. The enemy ships opened fire with devastating energy weapons that could have vaporized most alien vessels. But human ships were built differently. They were designed to withstand the crushing pressures of deep ocean exploration and the radiation storms of space mining operations. The human shields held, and the fleet returned fire with a ferocity that shocked the Zephyrians. Unlike other species who preferred elegant, efficient warfare, humans fought with the desperate intensity of survivors. Every shot was aimed to kill, every maneuver designed to maximize damage to the enemy. "Impossible," breathed Vextar's second-in-command as he watched 3 Zephyrian cruisers take critical damage from the human attack. "Their ships should have been destroyed by our opening volley." Elena's voice crackled over the communication system as the Resilience rolled to avoid incoming fire. "All ships execute pattern Gamma. Don't give them time to lock on." The human vessels began a complex dance through space, using maneuvers that would have killed most alien crews. Humans could withstand G-forces that would cause other species to lose consciousness or die. They twisted and spun through 3-dimensional space like fighters who had learned to think in ways their enemies couldn't comprehend. As the main battle raged, Captain Santos emerged from the asteroid field with devastating results. The mining charges had been precisely placed and timed. Massive asteroids, each weighing millions of tons, began hurtling toward the Zephyrian fleet at incredible speeds. "Incoming asteroids," called out a panicked Zephyrian sensor operator. "Multiple large objects on collision course." Vextar watched, in growing alarm as his perfectly organized fleet was forced to scatter to avoid the asteroid bombardment. The humans had turned the battlefield itself into a weapon, using their knowledge of mining and demolition to create chaos in the enemy ranks. But the real surprise came when the asteroid struck empty space and exploded, sending clouds of metallic debris throughout the Zephyrian formation. The humans had filled the space around the enemy fleet with a chaotic storm of metal fragments that interfered with sensors and communications. "We can't get clear targeting locks," reported the Zephyrian weapons officer. "The debris field is disrupting our targeting systems." Elena smiled as she watched the enemy fleet struggle with the metal storm. "All ships, advance into the debris field. Use short-range sensors and visual targeting." The humans did what the Zephyrians couldn't imagine doing. They flew directly into the dangerous debris field, using their superior reflexes and experience. With hazardous environments to navigate where their enemies feared to go, the human ships moved through the chaotic metal storm like sharks through bloody water, striking at confused Zephyrian vessels and disappearing before return fire could be organized. "This is impossible," Vextar snarled as he watched more of his ships take damage. "No species fights like this. They should be maintaining safe distances and following proper military doctrine." His tactical officer looked up from her station with wide eyes. "War leader, they're not following any military doctrine we understand. They're fighting like predators hunting in their natural environment." For the first time in his career, Vextar began to understand why the humans were called Deathworlders. They didn't fight like civilized beings from peaceful worlds. They fought like creatures that had evolved to survive in a universe that was actively trying to kill them. The battle continued for hours, with the humans using every advantage their harsh homeworld had given them. When Zephyrian ships tried to corner them in gravity wells, the humans dove deeper. Using their experience with high-gravity operations, to fight in conditions that would crush enemy crews. When the Zephyrians attempted long-range bombardments, the humans closed distance with suicidal-seeming charges that turned into devastating close-range attacks. Dr. Kim established communication with the Cathera survivors during a brief lull in the fighting. Scholar Theron's face appeared on the screen, his large eyes wide with amazement. "Captain Vasquez," Theron said in his gentle voice, "we are watching your battle from our shelters. Your tactics are unlike anything we have ever seen. The Zephyrians appear to be confused." Elena grinned as she watched another enemy cruiser take critical damage from a human attack run. "Scholar, we learned a long time ago that sometimes the best way to win a fight is to refuse to fight the way your enemy expects." "But Captain," Theron continued, "there are still so many of their ships. How can you possibly defeat such numbers?" Elena looked at her tactical display where the human fleet continued to dart between enemy vessels like wolves attacking a herd. They had destroyed or disabled nearly 50 Zephyrian ships, but hundreds more remained. "Scholar, humans have a saying," Elena replied. "It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." As if to prove her point, Captain Tanaka aboard the UES Perseverance executed a maneuver that left the Zephyrians speechless. His ship dove directly toward the surface of a small moon, using the gravitational field to slingshot around at tremendous speed. The maneuver subjected his crew to G-forces that would have killed most aliens, but humans from the high gravity training facilities of Earth barely noticed. The Perseverance emerged from behind the moon, traveling at nearly impossible speed, and struck 3 Zephyrian ships before they could react. The enemy vessels, designed for the low-gravity conditions of the Zephyrian homeworld, simply couldn't maneuver quickly enough to respond. "Retreat," Vextar finally ordered, his voice thick with something humans would have recognized as fear. "Fall back to defensive positions around the planet." But as the Zephyrian fleet tried to regroup, they discovered that the humans had been herding them like sheep throughout the entire battle. The seemingly random attacks and chaotic maneuvers had actually been forcing the enemy ships into a specific area of space. "Now," Elena said quietly into her communicator. Captain Santos, who had been waiting in the asteroid field with a dozen ships, triggered the largest mining operation in human history. Hundreds of massive charges detonated simultaneously, sending an avalanche of rock and metal toward the grouped Zephyrian fleet. The enemy ships scattered in panic, but they had nowhere to go. The humans had trapped them between the artificial asteroid storm and the planet's gravity well. Ship after ship took critical damage as they tried to escape the bombardment. "Impossible," Vextar whispered as he watched his mighty armada being torn apart by flying rocks and small human ships. "This cannot be happening." But it was happening, because the humans were fighting a type of warfare that the Zephyrians had never encountered. They were fighting with the desperate creativity of a species that had learned to turn any environment into an advantage, any obstacle into a weapon. As the day ended, nearly half of the Zephyrian fleet had been destroyed or disabled. The survivors huddled in orbit around the Cathera planet, their formation broken and their confidence shattered. Elena opened a communication channel to Vextar's command ship. "War Leader, this is your final warning. Withdraw from Kithra space immediately or we will finish what we started." Vextar's scaled face appeared on the screen, his predatory confidence replaced by something humans rarely saw in alien species: fear mixed with confusion. "You have fought well, Deathworlders," he admitted reluctantly. "But this battle has cost you greatly as well. How many of your ships can still fight?" Elena smiled, and for the first time Vextar understood why other species found humans terrifying. "All of them, War Leader. Every single one." It was true. The human fleet had taken damage. Some ships were running on backup power and several had injured crew members. But not one human vessel had been destroyed. They had fought a fleet 10 times their size and emerged bloodied but unbroken. Vextar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. By all military logic, the humans should have been annihilated in the first hour of battle. Instead, they had turned his overwhelming advantage into a devastating defeat. "This is not over," Vextar hissed, but his words lacked conviction. Elena's smile grew wider. "No, War Leader. It's not, because tomorrow the rest of the human fleet arrives. For the first time in his military career, Supreme War Leader Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire felt something he had never experienced before: the cold touch of inevitable defeat. The Galactic Awakening Supreme War Leader Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical display that showed the scattered remains of what had once been the most feared armada in the galaxy. In a single day, these impossible humans had destroyed or disabled nearly half of his fleet using tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Now he faced a choice that no Zephyrian commander had ever confronted: retreat or face total annihilation. The communication console chimed, and Vexatar accepted the incoming transmission with reluctance. The face that appeared belonged to his superior, Grand Admiral Krexivor, whose scales had turned the deep black color that indicated extreme displeasure. "Explain to me, War Leader," Krexivor hissed from the safety of Zephyrian space, "how 38 primitive ships have managed to defeat your armada." Vextar's own scales darkened with shame. "Grand Admiral, these humans fight unlike any species we have encountered. They use their environment as a weapon, ignore conventional tactics, and seem immune to fear or pain." Krexivor's eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. "You are telling me that creatures from a single backward world have bested the military might of our empire?" "They are Deathworlders, Grand Admiral," Vextar replied, and for the first time he spoke that word with something approaching respect. "Their entire evolution has been shaped by a planet that tried to kill them. They do not fight to conquer. They fight to survive, and that makes them far more dangerous than we anticipated." The Grand Admiral was silent for a long moment, processing this information. The Zephyrian Empire had built its power on the principle that superior numbers and technology always won. They had never encountered a species that could turn weakness into strength or disadvantage into opportunity. "Very well," Krexivor finally said. "I am dispatching the second and third fleets to your position. 800 ships should be sufficient to crush these humans through sheer numbers." Vextar felt a chill run through his scaled skin. "Grand Admiral, with respect, I believe we should reconsider our approach. These humans have already proven that numbers alone may not be enough." 800 ships, War Leader," Krexivor repeated coldly. "I will not allow our empire to be humiliated by primitives, regardless of their reputation." The transmission ended, leaving Vexatar alone with his thoughts and the growing realization that his superiors had no idea what they were truly facing. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the UES Resilience, Captain Elena Vasquez reviewed the battle reports with grim satisfaction. The human fleet had performed beyond all expectations, but she knew the real test was yet to come. The Zephyrians would not accept defeat easily, and their response would likely be overwhelming. "Captain," Lieutenant Chen called from his communications station. "I'm receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Word of our battle has spread through the communication networks." Elena raised an eyebrow. "What kind of transmissions?" Dr. Kim looked up from her xenobiology station with excitement in her eyes. "Captain, species throughout the galaxy are talking about what happened here. The Altarian Republic is calling it impossible. The Centauri Collective has issued a formal statement expressing shock and amazement at human military capabilities." Helena felt a strange mixture of pride and unease. Humanity had wanted to prove themselves worthy of respect in the galactic community, but perhaps they had proven too much too quickly. "Any word from the Galactic Council?" Elena asked. Chen's expression darkened. "Yes, Captain. They've issued a formal censure of our actions and demanded that we withdraw immediately. They claim we're destabilizing the established order." Elena snorted. "The established order that lets peaceful species get wiped out while everyone watches? I think I can live with destabilizing that." Commander Rodriguez looked up from the tactical station where he had been analyzing Zephyrian ship designs. "Captain, I'm detecting massive hyperspace signatures approaching the system. Whatever's coming, it's big." Elena moved to the main display as the sensors updated. Her heart sank as she saw the scope of what was approaching. 800 Zephyrian warships were emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system, forming a wall of metal and firepower that stretched across space like a mechanical storm front. "Chen, Get me a channel to Scholar Theron, Elena ordered. The gentle Cathara's face appeared on screen, and Elena could see the fear returning to his large eyes as reports of the approaching fleet reached the underground shelters. Captain Vasquez, Theron said softly, our sensors show a vast armada approaching. Surely even your remarkable species cannot face such numbers. Elena looked at the tactical display showing 800 enemy ships against her 38 damaged vessels. By any rational calculation, this was the end. But humans had never been particularly rational when it came to protecting others. Scholar, Elena said quietly, I need you to do something for me. I need you to broadcast a message on all galactic frequencies. Tell them what's happening here. Theron's eyes widened. Captain, you want the entire galaxy to witness your defeat? Elena smiled with the confidence of someone who had grown up in environments where giving up meant death. No, Scholar. I want them to witness what happens when Deathworlders refuse to surrender. As the massive Zephyrian fleet approached, something unexpected began happening throughout the galaxy. The Cathara, following Elena's request, broadcast live feeds of the approaching battle. Species that had remained neutral for centuries watched as 38 human ships prepared to face impossible odds to protect people they barely knew. The ocean world of Aquatica, the peaceful Merhai watched in their underwater cities as the humans formed their battle line. They know they cannot win, whispered Elder Coralin to her council, yet they do not retreat. In the crystal spires of the silicate hegemony, beings of living rock debated the implications. These humans display a form of courage we have not seen since the ancient wars, noted Primary Diamond Edge. Perhaps we have underestimated the value of such determination. Even in the halls of the Galactic Council, representatives who had voted to censure humanity watched the feeds with growing amazement. The humans weren't just facing certain death, they were doing it to save strangers who couldn't defend themselves. Back in the Kithra system, Elena opened a channel to the approaching Zephyrian fleet. The face that appeared was not Vextar, but a larger, more imposing Zephyrian with scales, so dark they seemed to absorb light. I am Grand Admiral Krexivor of the Zephyrian Empire, the alien announced with cold authority. You are the humans who destroyed half of our fourth fleet. Impressive, but futile. You now face 800, ships crewed by our finest warriors. Surrender immediately and we will grant you a quick death. Elena stood tall on her bridge, meeting the alien's predatory gaze without flinching. I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Fleet. We do not surrender when innocent lives are at stake. Krexivor's mouth opened in what might have been laughter. Admirable, but ultimately meaningless. You cannot possibly believe you can defeat 800 ships with your tiny fleet. No, Elena admitted. We probably can't. But we're going to try anyway because that's what humans do. For the first time in his long military career, Krexivor found himself puzzled by an enemy's response. Every species he had conquered had either surrendered when faced with impossible odds or attempted to bargain for better terms. None had ever simply acknowledged certain defeat and chosen to fight anyway. You are insane, Krexivor declared. Elena smiled. Grand Admiral, you have no idea. As the human fleet prepared for what appeared to be their final battle, something unprecedented happened across the galaxy. The live feeds from the Cathara system had reached every major species, and the response was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The first to move were the Altarian Republic ships. Captain Elena received an unexpected communication from Admiral Zhenka of the Altarian Third Fleet. Captain Vasquez, the bird-like alien said, her feathers ruffled with what humans would recognize as determination. We have been watching your battle. The Altarian Republic has decided that anyone willing to face such odds to protect the innocent deserves support. Elena's eyes widened as 60 Altarian ships dropped out of hyperspace near the human formation. The Altarians were known as cautious traders, not warriors, but their ships took position alongside the humans without hesitation. Admiral, Elena said, you don't understand what you're getting into. This isn't your fight. Zhenka's feathers ruffled further. Captain, My species learned something today from watching yours. Sometimes the right fight is worth any risk. More ships began arriving. The Centauri Collective sent 40 vessels. The Merhai dispatched their deep space exploration fleet. Even the normally isolationist Silicate Hegemony contributed 30 ships of living crystal that gleamed like jewels in the starlight. Grand Admiral Krexvor watched in growing disbelief as the small human fleet was joined by species from across the galaxy. Representatives of civilizations that had never worked together were forming a united front, inspired by humanity's example. Impossible, Krexvor hissed. These species have no military alliances. They should not be cooperating. His tactical officer looked up from her station with confusion. Grand Admiral, we're detecting over 300 ships of various species moving to support the humans. They're forming a combined fleet. Elena opened a communication channel to the approaching Zephyrian armada, and this time her smile was matched by representatives of a dozen different species who appeared on screen alongside her. Grand Admiral Krexvor, Elena said, I'd like you to meet our new allies. Apparently, the galaxy is tired of watching peaceful species get bullied by empires. For the first time in Zephyrian history, Krexvor found himself facing not a weaker enemy he could crush, but a coalition of species united by a principle he couldn't understand: the willingness to sacrifice for others. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The humans led the attack with their characteristic aggression and creativity, but now they were supported by the unique capabilities of species from across the galaxy. Altarian ships provided long-range support with their precision weapons. Merhai vessels designed for deep ocean pressure proved remarkably durable. The silicate ships were nearly indestructible and struck with devastating force. But it was more than just military capability. For the first time, species that had always fought alone were working together, sharing tactics and covering each other's weaknesses. The humans had done more than just fight. They had shown the galaxy what was possible when people chose to help each other instead of looking away. The combined fleet moved with a coordination that stunned the Zephyrians. Elena's voice carried across all allied frequencies as she coordinated the attack. All ships remember why we're here, she said. We're not fighting for territory or resources. We're fighting for the right of peaceful people to exist without fear. The Zephyrian fleet, despite its numerical advantage, found itself outmaneuvered and overwhelmed by opponents who fought with a unity of purpose they had never encountered. Ship after ship fell to the combined assault as the alliance pressed forward with devastating effect. Grand Admiral Krexvor watched his mighty armada being torn apart by an enemy that shouldn't have existed. The humans had done something that the Zephyrian Empire's analysts had declared impossible. They had united species that had no reason to trust each other in a common cause. Grand Admiral, his tactical officer reported with panic in her voice, we've lost over 400 ships. The enemy fleet is closing on our position. Krexvor stared at the tactical display, seeing his empire's invincible reputation crumbling before his eyes. Order a general retreat, he commanded bitterly. Signal all remaining ships to withdraw from the system. But Elena's voice crackled over the communication channels one final time. Grand Admiral, this is Captain Vasquez. Before you leave, I want you to understand something. The galaxy just changed. Peaceful species no longer stand alone. Anyone who threatens them now faces all of us. The surviving Zephyrian ships fled the system in disorder, leaving behind the wreckage of an empire's arrogance and the birth of something new in galactic politics. In the weeks that followed, the alliance that had formed in defense of the Cathara became permanent. The Galactic Defense Coalition, as it came to be known, established Earth as its headquarters and Elena Vasquez as its first supreme commander. Standing in the newly constructed command center overlooking Earth's blue oceans, Elena reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the smallest actions could have the largest consequences, and that courage was more powerful than any weapon. Scholar Thiren, now serving as the coalition's cultural advisor, joined her at the observation window. Captain Vasquez, he said in his gentle voice, the Cathara have a saying, the strongest tree is not the one that stands alone, but the one that helps others grow. Elena smiled as she watched ships from dozens of species patrolling the space around Earth. Scholar, humans have a saying too. When good people stand together, evil cannot stand at all. The galaxy had awakened to a new possibility, and it had taken a species of Deathworlders to show them the way. In choosing to answer a desperate call for help, humanity had not only saved the Kithara but had proven that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was simply the willingness to do what was right, regardless of the cost. The age of empires preying on the weak was ending, and the age of species standing together was just beginning.